Yeah.
It's cold, Basil. It's cold. Antarctica, go first. Snowstorm. Antarctica. Ice. Scientists are penguins. Antarctica, they're opening the abyss.
Guns, long-time Canarians.
Yep.
They will know. They will know our ever-evolving theory on Antarctica and what it means for the future of humanity. Part of our rants about Antarctica have been, apparently, we're the only people who actually listen to the Antarctic scientists. We've pointed this out many times, where the mainstream news and the politicians, they point to Antarctica as proof that the climate is changing and we're all going to die. And then the actual scientists who live there and do the work turn around and say, hey, no, you guys, stop.
Stop saying that.
It's actually not happening down here. You're misunderstanding, or you're misrepresenting our work. You got to stop using Antarctica for climate change stuff. And they are ignored. And we seem to be the only human beings to notice this and point it out.
Until now.
The
Wall Street Journal. Man, we had WAPO earlier. Now we have the Wall Street Journal. It's an opinion piece. It's the only way.
This is an episode. This episode of Canary Cry NewsTalk is a high watermark in our careers, because it shows multiple times now mainstream news catching up to what we've been saying for years. Finally, we seem to be having some sort of effect on this world, and they're getting all of this for pretty cheap too. So, you know what? You're welcome, mainstream.
Yeah. The headline here is, "Don't believe the hype about Antarctica's melting glaciers." Really?
Oh.
Okay. I thought it was all climate change. Alarming reports that the Antarctic ice sheet is shrinking misrepresent the science underway to understand a very complex situation. Antarctica has been ice covered for at least 30 million years. Oh, so close to that 33. The ice sheet holds about 26.5 million gigatons of water. A gigaton is a billion metric tons, or about 2.2 trillion pounds. If it were to melt completely, sea levels would rise 190 feet. Such a change is many millennia in the future, if it comes at all. Much more modest ice loss is normal in Antarctica. Each year, some 2,200 gigatons, or 0.01% of the ice, is discharged in the form of melt and icebergs, while snowfall adds almost the same amount. We've been saying that forever. Like, say, oh yeah, focus on the melt, but
they never mentioned. The only people that mention that, some ice melts, but more water freezes, makes more ice, it snows, were the literal Antarctic scientists trying to tell everybody that it wasn't a problem. But they would ignore that, CNN would ignore that very particular detail that the ice is getting replaced because it is, cold.
Mm-hmm. There is some nuance here. The difference between the discharge and addition each year is the ice sheet's annual loss. That figure has been increasing in recent decades from 40 gigatons a year in the 1980s to 250 gigatons a year in the 2010s. Okay, so there is a little bit of a runoff there. But okay, nothing to be too alarmed about, I guess. But the increase is a small change in a complex and highly variable process. For example, Greenland's annual loss has fluctuated significantly over the past century. And while the Antarctic losses seem stupendously large, the recent annual losses amount to 0.001% of the total ice. And if they continued at that rate, would raise sea level by only 3 inches over 100 years.
100 years.
Yeah, different math is what's happening here with this guy. Many fear that a warming globe could cause glaciers to retreat rapidly, increasing discharge and causing more rapid sea level rise. To get beyond that simplistic picture, it is important to understand how glaciers have flowed in the past to predict better whether they might flow faster in the future. Two recent studies reported in the media focus on the terminus of glaciers, i.e. where the ice, the ocean, and the ground come together. One study used an underwater drone to map the seabed at a depth of 2,000 feet, about 35 miles from the terminus of the Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica. Detailed sonar scans showed a washboard pattern of ridges, most less than 8 inches high. The ridges are caused by daily tides and serve as a record of where ice touched the seabed in the past. Researchers could read the record to infer that at some time in the past, the glacier retreated for a half a year at more than twice the fastest rate observed between 2011 and 2019. The cause of the specific event of the Thwaites Glacier remains unknown, in part because the time of the rapid retreat hasn't yet been determined. It likely happened more than 70 years ago, if not several centuries ago.
Yes, and that was one of the rebuttals that we read about this Doomsday Glacier.
Right.
CNN reported Doomsday Glacier shows ice melting faster than ever, or faster than the past, or whatever, however they said
They
it.
mention it here, but the media goes with this angle, and they have some of the headlines here. Quote, "A Doomsday Glacier the size of Florida is disintegrating faster than thought." A correct headline would read, "Thwaites Glacier retreating less than half as rapidly today as it did in the past."
Yeah. And the point is not that, they exaggerated. It's that then the scientists came out and
they said,
tried to correct the record and said, no, you're misunderstanding this. This is like 70 years ago. This reading is from, you're getting it all wrong, and totally ignored, almost, dare I say it, as if the mainstream is more concerned with making money from advertisers than it is actually telling the truth about anything.
They're looking for clicks. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
A second study tested the idea that fresh water from the melting of one glacier could be carried by currents along the shore to accelerate the discharge of nearby glaciers. Because this is really interesting right here. Because global climate models are insufficiently detailed to describe the ocean near the coast, researchers constructed a special model to prove out their idea. If ocean currents can connect the discharges of distant glaciers, that would add to the complexity and variability of changes in the Antarctic ice sheet. So basically saying what we've been kind of saying, that, bad data and models don't really reflect reality, but they just keep...
And the media is lying.
Yeah, of course. We already know that part.
Yeah.
Under scenarios deemed likely by the United Nations' Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a connection between ocean currents and discharge would increase the overall discharge rate in one region of the continent by some 10% by the end of the century. But to emphasize the idea being tested, the modelers used human influence almost 3 times larger.
Yeah.
Why would they do that? Because they can. Even though the fact is stated in the paper, reporters rarely catch such nuance, and the media goes with headlines such as, quote, "Antarctic ice melting could be 40% faster than thought," with the absurd statement that, quote, "a massive tsunami would swamp New York City and beyond, killing millions. London, Venice, and Mumbai would also become aquariums," end quote. A more accurate headline would read, quote, "Ocean currents connecting Antarctic glaciers might accelerate their melting." But dude, the guy, you can't get clicks from that. That's why they're not doing that. But I feel your pain, scientist. These two studies illustrate the progress being made in understanding a dauntingly complex mix of ice, ocean, land, and weather, with clever methods to infer past conditions and sophisticated computer modeling to show potential future scenarios. These papers describe the science with appropriate precision and caveats, but it is a shame that the media misrepresents the research to raise alarm. That denies the public the right to make informed decisions about climate action, as well as the opportunity to marvel at the science itself.
Ooh,
I gotta marvel the science.
Marvelous.
You're taking away from the beauty of science.
Science is truth.
Media, stop it. Give us the shine, not climate.
It brings up a subject that has, of course, been of major concern over the past 2 years as well. And that is the concept of informed consent.
Yeah.
misinforming the public so they consent to whatever green action, climate change, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The fact that everything's being misrepresented in such a ludicrous manner is literally goes opposite to the concept of informed consent. If there were a Nuremberg of climate change policy or something, they would be in big trouble one of these days.